This is a Flying Cow production. Well, hello and welcome back to the Great Film Challenge. Forgot to hit the button. There we go. Welcome back to the Great Film Challenge. I, of course, am your host, the Flying Cow himself, Clay Johnson. And here with me, as always, is my nephew, Aaron. Aaron, how we doing today, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. I will say I believe this is the final film of July, the final film in our blockbuster season, our blockbuster era, if you will.
My blockbuster era.
That's right. Gonna be in our Hollywood video era next. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke that old people will get. Yeah. So we are here to talk about the original, the best, in my opinion, pretty much the only good one in the series, the original Jurassic Park. The film came out in 1993. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, based on a book written by Michael Crichton. The screenplay was written by Michael Crichton and David Koepp. And it starred Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Attenborough, Samuel L. Jackson is in there. Wayne Knight, and many more. But yeah, so again, this is a huge film. Everybody knows this film, but just in case you don't, Jurassic Park is basically about a guy named John Hammond who makes a theme park with dinosaurs, and he recruits some archaeologists and says, "Come see my dinosaurs," and they're like, "Okay." Idea. And then the dinosaurs go roar, and everybody goes ah, and they say no, thank you,
and they leave after almost dying multiple times.
Yes, I will say though, with the exception, no, actually, I take that back. I will say, the first, it takes a while before they kill anybody in this film that you care about.
Yeah.
And I mean, even then, they kill Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mr. Arnold, which you don't really know him that well, but he wasn't an asshole like Dennis Nedry.
Yeah.
He wasn't, a money grubbing asshole like Gennaro.
Yeah.
He was just a guy trying to help and do his job. That's really all there was to it.
Yep.
And then of course, they also killed the trainer, which you might like him, you might not care. But he did at least give us that immortal line, "Clever girl." But yeah, I mean, Aaron, obviously this is a film that you have seen.
Plenty.
This is a film. Yeah. I mean, I will say, if this film, if we had not done this for the summer, then I would have suggested that we should do it during Thanksgiving, because they used to play this film around Thanksgiving time when I was, I don't know, but they did for like 3 or 4 years.
That's
I
weird.
think because it's all about eating turkey and the dinosaurs eat people. I don't know.
What?
But yeah, it was pretty synonymous with Thanksgiving for a little, at least to me, for a little while. But for you,
Yes.
what are your memories of this film? Do you remember the first time you saw it? All of that jazz.
Also youngerish. This might have been one of the few ones where I watched it when I was slightly older than 10, but
Okay.
definitely like maybe 12 or younger. So still,
Okay.
just
So you weren't
barely.
always 10 is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
not
good.
all of these. Listen.
Yeah.
Some I grew up watching, some were more recent, but
Sure.
majority of these blockbusters, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say,
I think Jaws was honestly the last one I watched just because it was so well up front with its brutality.
sure.
People were like, "Oh, we got to save it." Which
Yeah.
I guess is fair.
I mean, it's definitely, you know, we talked about the fact that after we made this list, we realized that 3/4 of these films were Steven Spielberg movies.
He has 5 movies on the list.
Actually, I think he's got more than that.
Maybe
I think he's
6 or
got
7.
6, at least 6, because he's got these 3. Then he's
Uh-huh.
got Schindler's List. He's got Saving Private Ryan and
Shawshank.
E.T. Shawshank is not
Oh wait,
his.
no. Yeah, I was
Shawshank
thinking
is
of
Frank
something
Darabont.
else.
E.T. Yeah, so he's got 6.
I didn't say Shawshank.
No, mm-mm.
It's a lie.
Wasn't me. Yeah. All right.
did
But
that?
yeah, so you know, we did not realize that 3/4 of these movies were Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, Jaws was an earlier part of
Yeah.
his filmography, and it's definitely, you know, a bit you know, it I was about to say it doesn't have kids in it, but there are kids in it, but they're not like leads.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously this has kids in the lead, and a lot
Yes.
of you know, obviously also Raiders doesn't have kids in the lead,
Yeah.
which we reviewed earlier this month. But you know, a lot of his later, you know, that Amblin feel was very much, you know, kids on an adventure type of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, Jaws obviously is less so that but you know, this film, I remember when I first saw this film, because this was, you know, when this came out, it was huge.
Yeah.
You know, I remember my 5th grade teacher telling us about going to see this movie, and she was like, it was crazy. When the movie was over, nobody made a sound.
Wow.
She was like, everybody was basically so exhausted from being scared or excited or just shouting,
Wow.
just enjoying the film, that when the film was over, everybody was just quiet and they just walked out of the movie because they were too tired to do anything else. Like I was just like, wow, okay. I don't know if I necessarily was that, you know, drained when I first saw it, but you know, I didn't actually get to see this movie for a few years. And in fact, I think actually the first time I got to see it was when it was then on network television.
Yeah.
Because again, grew up very conservative, very Christian.
Yeah.
Basically, we didn't watch things that were iffy unless our church said it was okay. Yeah, silly. And our pastor's wife saw this movie and said it was good. So then we were allowed to watch it. Yeah. But yeah, so you know, when I finally got to watch this movie, you know, it was huge, and I was so I loved it so much. You know, it was just such a fun movie, fun experience. And you know, there are, like you, I have seen this movie so many times.
Yeah.
But what I find so interesting about this film, because obviously there have been sequels.
Yes.
They have, they did 3 sequels to the original, and then they tried to reboot it with Jurassic World, which, I mean, I think Jurassic World is probably the next most successful.
Yeah.
But it still isn't quite there. I mean, forever and always, Jurassic Park will be the best movie in the series.
Honestly.
Because it was original, because it was it wasn't about capitalizing or trying to recreate anything. It just was itself.
Yes.
And I think the thing that they forget about in these sequels is, obviously there's the dinosaurs and there's the spectacle of the dinosaurs. And, obviously that is fun. But then there's also, Spielberg is doing so many things at the same time, because he's spinning like 500 plates simultaneously, and they're all just nailing it. They're all spinning perfectly. Like I said, you've got the dinosaurs, and what I love about this one, I mentioned for one of our earlier films this month, the practical effects. When we were talking about Raiders. Again, now obviously this one, it's 93, so there are some actual CG scenes with the dinosaurs, and
especially the dinosaurs.
I mean, I will say, while you can tell which ones they are, not just for the time, I think that the effects still hold up.
They're not
pretty
bad,
well.
Honestly.
No, but I also appreciate that it's not all special effects. There's some animatronics. There's some puppetry.
I love the puppets.
It's amazing. It's so much fun that there's all of these layers. We get the scene with the Triceratops.
Yes.
Can you imagine how much lamer that would have been if that was a CG Triceratops?
Yeah.
Like, you can watch it now and you can see the texture of the scales.
Yes.
You can see them like caress this thing, and it's just it's so good and it's so tactile, and I don't care that it's not 100% real or whatever. It's real enough. It's tangible.
Yeah, it's the level of groundedness you get with puppetry. For that, especially when you can make them really good. The tension, the realism is so palpable, and it's just amazing, especially when the actor pairs so well in that scene.
Well, and the thing is that, like, even with the practical effects, sometimes they would use the CG in tandem with the practical effects. Like I told you, there's that bit where you see the T-Rex and he's like looking in, and you see his eye, and his pupil like narrows and then dilates. I'm pretty sure that was done with CG, but you still also get the practical eye. And it's just yeah, I hate that we have gone so far away from that. I wish that we would still, use the practical effect, because there's just something that you cannot recreate about something that is tangible, that you can actually feel, and that the actors can feel and touch. There's just something missing when that's not there. But then also, obviously there's the characters and the way that they interact. We've got such what's so funny about this film is, now we look at it and we're like, oh yeah, Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum and Laura Dern, Jurassic Park, obviously makes sense.
Yeah.
When that was, nobody knew who most of them were.
Yeah.
I mean, I think probably the one with the biggest name at that point would have been Jeff Goldblum, but honestly,
he was still kind of starting though, right?
Well, no, he'd been around since the early 80s, but he was mostly in weird stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I think that this film not just kind of put Goldblum more on the map than he'd been, but it also kind of changed the image of Goldblum. Like, don't get me wrong, he was always weird, but he was kind of like a fascinating weird after this.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, I think he was also always fascinating weird, but he was a more, let's say, consumer version of fascinating weird. I mean, the famous scene now that everybody it's on like a whole bunch of different things, the image of him laying down with his shirt off and kind of things like that. Like it's painted now as like sexy, but when it was happening, his character was like injured.
Yeah.
And he was just like, if you look at that scene in context, it is a side view while other action is happening. He's just like sitting, like he's not trying to look sexy in that.
Yeah.
He just happened to kind of look sexy. It's Jeff Goldblum. But yeah, it really kind of changed his image. It kind of, after this, he ended up doing Independence Day a few years later,
I love that movie.
And, it really kind of, gave him kind of a new trajectory for his career. But like Sam Neill and Laura Dern, like Laura Dern had done, like, I think the biggest things she'd done before this were all in like David Lynch movies, which David Lynch is kind of one of it. He's like an indie director that is somehow really well known. Like he's just a very weird filmmaker. Like honestly, his career is one that also kind of doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but it's also amazing that it took off the way that it did.
Yeah.
Because he's just so odd and unapologetically so. But yeah, like that was the kind of stuff that she was really doing at that time. So she was an odd choice to be in this big, blockbustery type film. And Sam Neill also, he's from New Zealand. He'd done like a couple of, films in like the 80s and stuff like that, but more kind of, not this type of thing. So this was an odd casting for your leads in this film, but it totally works 100%. And then, of course, then you've got Sir Richard Attenborough, who does a great job making John Hammond a character which we should really kind of hate.
Yeah.
But the way that he's played by Richard Attenborough, you kind of feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just there's that going on, but then the thing that I think none of the films are able to land is that it's not just, and honestly, I don't think any of them get even close to nailing the depth of character that we get in this first one. I except for the characters that they bring back, and honestly, in all of the ones that they bring them back, they don't fit as well. But in none of those other films do you really latch on to the characters the way that you do in this one. But then there's also the fact that they ask such deep ethical questions in this film. just because you can do something, that doesn't mean that you should. People, I think that people sometimes lose that when they're, because all they really think about is the dinosaur stuff and blah, blah, blah. But it's just like, with E.T., which we haven't discussed yet, but people often forget that is about, a single mother raising her kids after her husband abandons them.
Yep.
And that heart makes everything else in the movie mean something.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. This ethical problem, like, you are thrilled by the monsters and the chases and the dinosaurs and all this kind of stuff. But then later on, when you're driving home, you're also then thinking about those ethical questions and you're challenged by them.
Yes.
It gives you something more to chew on. And I think some of the others attempt some, but I honestly can't, like, there is a bit of a conservationist vibe in The Lost World, which I think is the only other one that Spielberg directed. So they attempt to do a little bit there, but then again, you're not as compelled by those characters, just different things like that. And it just, and we say this as, a new Jurassic Park movie is coming out. And so far, I haven't heard anything great about it. And I'm just like,
stop.
Yeah, it's like, can't we just let something good be good? And the answer is no, because we live in a capitalist system and they have to squeeze every last cent out of something. Who cares if the art's there? It's just frustrating. But yeah, is there anything else that you want to say about this film?
There's so much.
Oh yeah, we didn't mention, I can't believe that we haven't mentioned John Williams in any of these. I mean, we did for Jaws, but we didn't talk about him in Raiders. But obviously, again, we did mention when we did Jaws that John Williams, and especially in this part of Steven Spielberg's career, was scoring all of his films.
Yep.
I think he changed composers at a certain point later in his filmography, but I can't remember when, or but it doesn't matter because we're not talking about those right now. But yeah, this is one of those films that one of the first things I latched onto with this movie was the score.
It has.
I absolutely love this score. It's because it's just, for a film about dinosaurs that eat people, it's just such a beautiful ba-na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na-na. It's just I love it. Love this score. But I bring that up. I know you're a big music guy, so yeah.
Williams is great in everything.
Yeah,
I don't think I've heard even a single bad any piece at all from him. And the second I see him in a new setting or movie, I'm like, this is gonna have good music.
Mm-hmm.
And even if the story or whatever, the movie, the show or whatever, that stuff isn't that good, the music will either pair with it perfectly, or it's just going to be good overall.
Yeah.
And I love just everything he's done. And he's not even dead yet and still composing.
I think he's 96. I was going to say he's in his 90s. I knew that. But no, he's still, and I think he still does performances at the Hollywood Bowl every year. He just keeps going. He's guy,
great. I love him.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else?
There's so much. I also do, like you said earlier, there's so much depth that you can latch on to
Yeah.
when you go into this. The smaller, more side-ish characters are great. Nedry sucks, but he's so good at
I was gonna
sucking.
say, I think this was the first thing that I ever saw Wayne Knight in outside of Seinfeld. And honestly, I didn't see that much of Seinfeld at this point. So yeah, he's just a wonderfully despicable character. And then, you know, we mentioned Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, Arnold was great.
Yeah, in a role the year before he broke out with Pulp Fiction, you know, like I told you, we saw him earlier when we watched Do the Right Thing.
Yes.
And you know, obviously he I think he's been in movies since like the 70s. Like
I think so.
But you know, he didn't really pop until, you know, the 90s.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, just yeah. And I mean, what I think is so fascinating about this is, you know, this is such a huge film, but I was telling you, one of the main reasons that Spielberg made this film was so that he would have the funding and the backing to then make Schindler's List.
Yes.
So this kind of was an afterthought a little bit because he definitely was, you know, what he really wanted to make at this point was Schindler's List.
Yeah.
And the studio really wanted him to make a blockbuster. So you would think that maybe he would have phoned this in, but he didn't.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think that what he really was able to sink his teeth into with this one was the technology and bringing the dinosaurs to life and things like that. There was something that he you know was able to chew on that made you know gave him an interest in. But I mean, you know, like I mentioned to you, this came out the same year as Schindler's List. And in fact, I think he might have actually been working on both at the same time for like a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
I think he was going back and forth at a certain point. But yeah, like I said, for that being the case, it's astonishing how, you know, masterful this film is for what it is. I mean, obviously it's in a completely different realm of something like Schindler's List, which we'll talk about later because it is on our list. But for the type of film that it is, you know, I mean, like I said, it's a of the time Spielberg film. You know, it's that kind of you know, big crowd pleasing blockbuster that has a lot more depth than you think it does.
Yes.
You know, so yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's a great film. All right. Well, I think that's all we have time really to say about it. I mean, like you said, there's a lot more that we could say, but I think if we went much more in depth, this would end up being an hour-long podcast.
Yeah.
And we don't really need to do that. But yeah, so make sure that you check us out on our socials at The Flying Cow Pod. You can also email at theflyingcowpod@gmail.com. You know, make sure to check out everything that we have going on. And next time, like I said, we are done with our blockbusters, but we're not quite back to our, you know, spinning life. Not quite yet, because it just so happens that this week, and we are recording probably about a month ahead of when this is actually going to come out. As of this recording, we are in the beginning of July.
Yep.
And so this will, I think, actually drop the first weekend of August.
Yeah.
But it just so happens that this weekend, we are getting an anniversary re-release of a film on our list. This is Spinal Tap.
I'm so curious to see this movie.
I will say I am very excited about this film. I have not seen this film, but it is in the same vein of the Christopher Guest mockumentary style of, for anyone that is familiar with films like Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, things like that. This is kind of the film that started that whole thing. So Aaron has no idea what any of those movies are. We might be able to see if maybe we take a detour and maybe watch Waiting for Guffman or something like that, if we have time.
Yeah.
Come and check that out with us next week. But until that time, moo.